Hey guys, in this lesson we're going to be focusing on workflow. So specifically we're going to take a look at using Git and GitHub and working with SSH. And we're also going to learn something interesting with GitHub service hooks. So we'll set up a cool system so that whenever you push changes to your GitHub repo, we want to make sure that the project stored on your server will automatically detect that and pull in those changes without you having to move a finger. And we'll take a look at that in this lesson. So we're all set to get started, but one quick note is if you're brand new to all of this, if you've never used Git or GitHub or SSH, this may not be the video for you. This is more of a workflow video. If you would like to learn about that though, we have tons of tutorials all over NetTuts. Just search for Git Introduction, look for Introduction to GitHub, we've got all that stuff. All right, so I'm going to get started and create a new directory, and we'll use the structure menu app that you can get on NetTuts. So we'll call this Awesome Project. And within here, all we want is an index.html file, and I'll populate that with just some beginning markup. So let's bring this into TextMate. And if we open up our index.html file, I'm going to, for the purposes of testing, put in the current time, which is 11:53. Now, the next step is to push this to our GitHub repo. So we'll do that right now. So I'll close that out, and we're going to upload this to GitHub. Open up the command line, and I'm going to cd to my desktop, and go into that awesome project file, and we'll create a new git init. And if we want to run git status, you can see that there's no tracked files, but we have updated this. So we'll go ahead and add index.html to the stage. I'm going to commit it. First commit. Okay, so now we need to push it to GitHub, but we have to create that connection, right? So now we'll go into GitHub. Once you've created your account, you'll come here, new repository, give it a new name, awesome project, and create that repository, and it'll give you instructions here now. This is if you have yet to create your project, but we've already created a Git repo. So all we have to do is copy that, and we'll paste it in. And that's all we need to do, and those files are now being uploaded. If I come back, click here when we're done, and sure enough, you can see the index.html file with the current time. Cool. All right, so now we want to upload these files to our server. Most of the time, maybe you might use something like an FTP program or something like Transmit to manually copy that folder over to your server. I'm going to show you a different way of using SSH. So we'll open up, once again, iTerm, and I'll create a new tab, and we're going to SSH into my server. Now, if you've never used SSH or you don't know how to use it with your host, it's different for every host. So the easiest thing I can tell you to do is to Google it. So for example, I'm with Media Temple. If you want to know how to do it with Media Temple, you could do a search for Media Temple SSH, and they'll have instructions here of what your username is, how to log in. It's pretty simple. So with that out of the way, let's try it. So I'll go to SSH, my website, like so. And it's going to ask me for the password associated with it. That's fine. And now we're in. If I list the directory structure, we're set up. So I'll go into my domains folder, and I'm going to go into my demos server area. And now we have a bunch of different projects, ideas, and demos. So what I want to have happen now is I want to pull in this project right here. And we can do that. You see this SSH button? I'll copy that. Again, if this is your first time using GitHub, you'll need to set up something called a public key. It's really not hard. It's just a matter of creating an identification key on your computer, and then you would do something like go to account settings, SSH public keys, add another public key, and you would paste that in. And if you need any help, they have step-by-step instructions right here. All right, so let's go back, copy this again, and I'm going to do git clone and bring that project in. And it's really as simple as that. If I list the files, sure enough, you'll see awesome project right here. So let's cd into that, list the files, and there's our index.html file. So let's see if it works. demo.jeffreyway/awesome project. And there we go. There's the current time. So now the next step is, though, let's say we want to update this GitHub, this repo, because we're going to. We're going to update it with the current time. But then we have that additional step again where we push it to GitHub, then maybe we would have to log back into our server with SSH and copy those files over, and then do another Git Pull. That's one way to do it, and why don't we do it manually? We'll add a couple extra steps in here, but I think it's important if you've never done this before to see how it works. I'm going to update the time to 11:57. Save it, close it out, and once again, we're going to go back to this directory, git status will show what's changed. Okay, git add index.html, updated time, and we'll push that to our GitHub repo. Come back and let's verify that it has happened. And sure enough, now it's 11:57. But again, like I said, it's not going to update on our server. In order for it to work on our server, we have to go back, do a git pull. And what this will do is it'll pull in the latest changes. This is really quick. It takes 5 seconds, but you're not always going to be logged into your server with SSH. So you might be in situations where you would have to re-log in, and that all takes time. It can take a moment or so. So if you're permanently logged in, that's one thing, but otherwise, it can take a little bit of time. So wouldn't it be neat if every single time we push to this GitHub repo, the project on our server was automatically updated? And you can do that. Some people don't know about this, but if you go to admin, there's this option right here called service hooks, and you got a bunch of them. But the one we want is post receive URL. And right here, we'll hit these URLs with post requests when you push to us, passing along information about the push. So that means every time you push updates to your GitHub repo, the URL you pass here will be hit. Now, when it is hit, it's going to pass through information about the push. Now, in this case, we don't need it. All we want to do, though, is have a page that will perform that git pull for us automatically. Okay, we can do that. But how do we do it without using the command line? How do we do it with maybe PHP? Is there a way to execute a shell command with PHP? Yes, there is. And I'll show you. It's called shell exec, but that's not the function we're going to use. So right here, shell exec, execute a command via the shell and return the complete output as a string. That's exactly what we want. But what I use is the backtick operator, and it's identical. So if you've ever seen something like this before, you probably assumed that those were single quotes, but they're not. They're backticks. And when it's a backtick, it'll be treated as a shell command. All right, so now we're getting there. Let's try this out. I'm going to open my project in TextMate again and add a new file. And we'll give it a unique name like github.php. And this will be the file that's responsible for pulling in the latest changes. So I'm going to do git pull, but again, I'm not going to wrap it in single quotes. I'm going to wrap it in backticks like so. And that's it. So I'll save that. And now we want to have that stored on our server. Why don't we go ahead and add that? Git status, git add GitHub, and commit. And we'll say for pulling something very quick. And push those changes to the server. Note, we've kind of doubled up on our steps here. Normally you would do that all at once, so you wouldn't have to do these extra steps. Go back to it, and now we have github.php. The last step now, or not the last step, but almost the last step, let's clear this out, is to do another git pull, and that'll bring in the new github.php file. I list the files again. Now that's available to us. So now what we need to do here is every time we push to our GitHub repo, figure out the URL. And it's going to be demo.jeffrey-way.com/awesomeproject/github.php. Let's try it out now. Let's go here, admin, service hooks, post receive URL, paste that in, and update the settings. Hopefully we did it right. So I'm going to go back into TextMate, go to index.html, update the time again to 12:02, save it. We're going to push these changes, git add index, git commit, and do a final push. So if we did this right, not only did we push these changes to our GitHub repo, but we also pulled in those changes from our server. Refresh the page. Let's check. The time is 12:02, and if we did it right, this will be updated on our server as well. And sure enough, it's done. So isn't that really cool? No longer do you have to think about doing all these extra steps where you manually copy files over. It's simply, once you upload to GitHub, the rest is done for you. So that is what I wanted to go over today, just a simple workflow of how to work with projects, how to work with SSH and Git and GitHub. If any of these steps you're not familiar with or you don't quite understand, just leave a comment and a bunch of us will chime in and help you out. For more tips, tutorials, screencasts, whatever, always subscribe to us. Or if you don't like RSS, we're on Twitter at EnvadoWebDev, and we're also on Facebook at facebook.com/NetTutsPlus. My name's Jeffrey Way, and I'll see you later.